Let's jump right into this explainer. Today we're unpacking a really intense source dossier called Institutional Transformation Strategy, from managed Christianity to real Christianity. And I gotta say, this is totally unlike anything we've looked at recently. It's this dark, gritty manual on spiritual survival that just completely strips away all the polish of modern institutional religion. It doesn't read like some dusty theological textbook. Actually, it's structured way more like a tactical field manual for the living. And it asks some seriously uncomfortable questions about what it actually means to be spiritually alive in a world that's practically built for distraction.
So we're launching straight into the source's most provocative hypothesis. The author hits us with a simple but honestly pretty jarring question. Are you physically alive but spiritually dead? The text introduces what it calls the zombie apocalypse hypothesis. Basically, it argues that modern society, and specifically the modern church, is absolutely filled with people who are trapped in this state of spiritual zombification. You know the type. Going through the motions, walking around, doing the daily grind, saying all the right things, but on the inside, entirely hollow.
To diagnose this condition, the report actually pulls from the ancient biblical vision in Ezekiel 37. You might know it as the Valley of Dry Bones. The author points out something super interesting here. You can have institutions filled with the exact correct vocabulary, the perfect doctrines, flawless Sunday service programs, but absolutely zero ruach. Now, ruach is the ancient Hebrew word for breath or spirit. The argument here is that sure, the bones are there, the organizational structure is solid, but the actual breath of life, it's just completely missing from these heavily managed spaces.
This brings us to a really crucial point in the source, and it's kind of the core of its whole institutional transformation strategy. It's the stark contrast between managed Christianity and real Christianity. Managed Christianity is described as this wide gate. It's totally optimized for comfort, brand management, and those quick emotional dopamine hits you get from a super polished worship service. Honestly, it requires almost nothing from you. But real Christianity, that demands a radical cost. The text describes it as an unmanageable fire, built on supernatural expectation and high-friction apostolic discipleship. And the author is super clear on this. You literally cannot have both. One simply cancels out the other.
And the report doesn't pull any punches here. It agitates this whole problem by calling out two specific modern theological ideologies. First up is cessationism. That's the doctrine that miraculous gifts basically just ceased back in the first century. The source is pretty blunt, describing this as the spiritual castration of the modern believer. It claims this theology was essentially invented by institutions just to explain away their own lack of power. Then it goes after the prosperity gospel, calling it, and this is quite a phrase, mammon wearing a cross. It views it as a business model that trades the real refining furnace of the narrow path for a Jesus bumper sticker on a luxury car. The report sees both of these as lethal escape routes from real costly transformation.
So the report conducts this kind of visual autopsy, right? It pits the dead altars of managed institutional religion directly against the living temple. But here's the crucial detail. The living temple isn't depicted as a brick-and-mortar building, it's an actual human body. The source insists that a true believer's nervous system literally has to be regulated for spiritual warfare. It has to be physically capable of housing the unmanageable fire of the kingdom. And to be clear, the author isn't speaking metaphorically here. They mean this in a literal biological sense.
Moving from theology straight into neurobiology, the explainer breaks down this fascinating concept that the architecture of the ancient temple is actually a literal biological blueprint of the human body. The mapping here is wild. Think about the outer court, where the sacrifices happened. The author maps that to our adrenal glands and our stress-driven survival mode. Then you have the holy place. That represents the thymus gland, which is the center of immunity and the heart. And finally, the Holy of Holies, the innermost sanctum, is mapped directly to the pineal gland in the skull, which governs our deepest brainwave states. It's this incredible synthesis of ancient text and modern human anatomy.
Now, this biological mapping builds directly on the idea of the New Covenant. The source talks about the democratization of the prophetic. Back under the Old Covenant, the Shekinah glory, the actual manifest presence of the divine, dwelt externally in a physical, geographical temple. But the author's big argument is that under the New Covenant, that glory didn't just retire. It relocated. It moved directly into the internal biological network of every single believer. Essentially, we are now the hardware meant to run this divine software.
But, and this is a big but, there's a massive biological blockade preventing this from happening. The author argues that modern society keeps our nervous systems trapped in what they call a beta hum. That's a state of constant sympathetic overdrive, where we're just running at 3,000 RPM all the time. We're constantly flooded with cortisol from our screens, from our stress, our anxiety. The profound takeaway here is that it's physiologically impossible to hear the still, small voice of the divine when your body's alarm system is just blaring nonstop. You literally cannot access the frequency of peace while your body is trapped in biological panic.
So how do we hack this biological blockade? Well, the report outlines a really specific tactical protocol. It kicks off with the gateway, which is using specific breathwork techniques to actively suppress those anxious analytical beta brain waves. This physical reset is what allows you to become the witness. In this state, you can observe the stored tension in your body without attaching some big narrative or story to it. You just notice it. After that, you move into the architecture phase. This is all about constructing a hyper-specific visualization of your future self to reprogram the subconscious. It's a continuous process designed to pry open what they call the theta window. That's the deep brainwave state where real spiritual and neurological reorganization actually takes place.
And the source roots these modern biological hacks straight into ancient history. It specifically points to the Tamphion. Now that's a Greek word for an inner chamber or a locked storeroom. The author frames this ancient practice as Yeshua's original prescription for extreme sensory deprivation. The idea is, by going into a closed room and totally shutting out the world, you drastically lower your nervous system's processing load. The external noise completely fades out, the performance anxiety drops, and that quiet interior voice finally becomes audible.
To deliver the tactical cure, the source outlines what it calls a minimum viable rule. These are raw, non-negotiable daily directives designed to rebuild your spiritual architecture. And it starts immediately. The protocol is this. You wake up 20 minutes earlier than usual. You do just 5 to 7 minutes of coherent breathing. That's exactly 5 seconds in, 5 seconds out. Right after that, you read exactly 1 chapter of Scripture. But here is the most crucial rule behind the whole thing. Do not perform for God. Just be present. The ultimate goal is biological and spiritual alignment, and avoiding that trap of pharisaical box-checking entirely.
From there, the report actually gamifies this biological and spiritual reset by mapping out a 40-day initiation cycle. It deliberately mirrors the wilderness survival tactics of ancient figures like Moses, Elijah, and Yeshua. So by day 1, you're actively shedding that anxious beta hum. Fast forward to day 20, and your body is entering the deep focus of the Tamayon, achieving true somatic alignment. And finally, by day 40, the text argues you're physically and spiritually prepped to access real apostolic empowerment. It's essentially a complete system reboot for the living temple.
As we wrap up this gritty briefing, we're left with a final, highly provocative mandate from the source. The author challenges you directly. Are you going to exit the refining furnace early just for the comfort of the wide gate, or are you actually willing to pay the cost of the narrow path? It's a powerful invitation to stop settling for managed, comfortable religion, to actually test the biological mechanics of faith for yourself, and to literally reclaim your breath. So what do you say? Are you ready to find out what's on the other side of the fire?